Welcome to Before the Butterfly, where exceptional people candidly share about their most difficult days. Join us to hear the stories and struggles that came before your favorite success stories. Every butterfly was once a caterpillar, after all. I'm your host, Alexandra Joy, and this is Before the Butterfly. We have an extremely exciting guest with us, Julie Benko. You may have seen today's butterfly in your favorite Broadway productions, from Fiddler on the Roof to Les Mis or Spring Awakening on tour. She is also an acclaimed writer, director, and recording artist. The New York Times named Julie the 2022 breakout star for theater for her recent triumph on Broadway, playing the very iconic Fanny Brice in Funny Girl. Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the show, Julie.
Hello, gorgeous. Thank you.
Are you getting sick of hearing that yet?
No, I don't know. I don't know that I'll ever get sick of that.
Good, because I'm sure you'll hear it for a long time.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Julie. I'm so thrilled to have you here, and I'm excited to ask you some questions. So let's jump right into it, huh?
Great.
All right, so
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. First, I want to ask, how has it been you're coming to the end of your journey playing Fanny right now. How is that feeling for you?
It's a mixture of feelings. Obviously, this show and this role has, it's been like the most exciting time in my life. And it's, what has happened for me has just been, sort of beyond my wildest dreams, and it's opened a lot of doors. And I love playing the role of Fanny. There is no greater role for women in musical theater. So I'm really going to miss getting to play a role that has so many colors, so much depth, some meaty part. But it's also extremely exhausting, and the amount of time and effort it takes to keep my instrument as tip-top condition as it needs to be has taken a real toll on my life, and I really have not gotten to see my friends and family in a very real way for a long time, because I've been really having to just manage my instrument with so much diligence, and I'm really I've done the show almost 175 times at this point.
Wow.
And I'm definitely looking forward to something new as well. And just I've been with the show since last February. It's been almost a year and a half, and I'm looking forward to just being a part of a new group and a new story and create something from scratch. But I'm gonna miss Fanny a lot. But I'm also just ready for a new community and a new story.
Yeah, for sure. I act as well, and I always find that shows ending, even with amazing roles, it's always very bittersweet. And it is nice to have a change of pace, for sure. I'd love to ask you, what was your audition process like for Fanny?
It was not particularly rigorous. I did a self-tape. I couldn't get seen. They just wouldn't give me an audition. They went through like 5 or 6 rounds of seeing people, and I couldn't get in a room. And they weren't finding who they wanted. And I finally got an audition for the standby, and it was a self-tape, and I had to do half of Greatest Star or half of Parade and the song People, and I had to do one scene. And then I got a call back a couple weeks later, and I went in person, and I did the same songs, and then I did that same scene that I had done on the tape, and then one more scene, and then I got it.
That's awesome.
2 auditions.
And just one round of callbacks?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome. Sometimes,
I know.
you can end up on like 18 rounds of callbacks, something absurd. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Spring Awakening, I was in probably 9 times, and and there have been plenty of shows I've been in for 7, 8 times and never booked. So yeah, and this time it was like one in person callback, and I got it. Granted, like
Wow.
Michael Mayer was directing, and he had, he knew me from Spring Awakening, so maybe that helped. But I also know that they called up one of my previous stage managers from another Broadway job I had done, to ask how I was to work with and if I was responsible as an understudy. Because I know this because when I announced that I was doing it, she wrote to me and said, they wrote to me and asked, and I gave you a good review. But and the lesson is always be nice to your stage manager.
For real.
Because they will, like that stuff really comes back. It can come back to you.
Oh, totally. I think it always does. There were so many talented performers in Funny Girl. Did you have anybody in particular, at least just at the top of your mind, who you had the most fun playing opposite of, and why?
I'll make a special shout out to Jeremiah James, who was the standby for Nick Arnstein, and we just did a lot of rehearsing by ourselves, in the lobby, during tech and stuff. And, I kind of made him. I was like, I need to rehearse. And he was like, oh, okay. And he was like, I really don't learn, from watching. I need to do. So I was like, well, we're doing it, so we just worked a lot together. And then in the end, I was supposed to make my Fanny debut. It was like the Friday after we opened. And I was supposed to have my put-in rehearsal the Thursday. And then I woke up on Thursday morning and they said, Ramin Karimloo has COVID. Jeremiah is taking your put-in rehearsal. So Jeremiah will go on with Beanie, do the put-in with Beanie, go on with Beanie. And then you will have your put-in the next day, Friday morning, basically. And then you'll go on with Jeremiah. So Jeremiah really... we were, he had one show under his belt, so he was like old hat at it, at that time. But we were sort of walking through the fire together, and it was always just really fun when he was on, and also Liz McCartney, who was the standby for Mrs. Bryce. Like there was a long period, there were long periods of time where the three of us would go on together, and it was just really. We built a real family up in what's called the tree house, where they keep all the understudies and the standbys, the swings. So it was just really fun to sort of bring that energy that we had built up in our little clubhouse where there's no space, and onto down to the star dressing rooms, and it's just like was such a pleasure,
Yeah, that's so
and
neat.
I think just there's just so much playfulness and joy and humility that comes with the people who are performing the roles, who don't always get the chance.
Standby, swings, alternates are just truly the backbone of theater, especially on Broadway. And now I think more than ever, I'm seeing, and I hope that you are seeing and feeling as well, that people are really starting to understand that with COVID and stuff, because people have to go out of a show way more frequently than maybe we did 3-4 years ago.
I think a lot of people within the industry like totally understand and are very supportive, but it can be challenging, I think, when you're talking to there are a lot of people who this is not what they do, and they just and they just think, well obviously the best person got the job, and it's like it's just so much more complicated than that. It's not that the
so
person who got the job
laughable.
is bad either. It's not
Oh,
that they're
of course,
bad. It's
yeah.
just that it's like there's so many things that go into why one person gets one particular job.
I have to say, my own 2 cents, like, oh my God, Julie, you knocked this role out of the park. Like, wow. You are the Fanny in my mind. Your performance really just like...
Oh boy.
hit the nail on the head in just such an awesome way. And with all of the kind of craziness, COVID and other stuff, that surrounded parts of this production, I think that it's so awesome that your praises were really sung in the press. I hope that you have felt that love because you deserve to. You really
I
just
definitely
did
have.
a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. I definitely have. And I don't, but it's just, I also see, I can hear from my dressing room people online entering the theater sometimes, if they're loud enough. So
Oh,
I
no.
have heard I literally can hear, like, I'm putting my pin curls in and getting, doing my warm up, and I can literally hear people who are so angry and upset yelling at the security staff or the ushers or the box office. I can hear it. So I
Oh
know that
my
people get
God.
angry. I mean, and it's interesting, obviously, and you're just like, well, I'm gonna do the best show I can, and and I always get these lovely, lovely notes from people afterwards who are like, I was so angry, I was so disappointed, and then I thought, well, I'm here, and so I stayed, and I'm so glad I did, and now I'm gonna have a different idea about when I get that little white slip of paper, in my playbill, whatever show I'm seeing. So it's absolutely for me been to have my story celebrated, has been really unbelievable and wonderful.
So which song from I almost said Fanny Girl, from Funny Girl, do you never get tired of singing, and why?
It's a really amazing score, so I feel like I have not really gotten tired of singing almost any of it. My favorite scene into song is the last scene, the finale, into the Funny Girl, and then it goes into the Don't Rain on My Parade reprise. I mean, that section is just, as an acting piece, is so gutting. It just completely requires everything of you as an actor, and it's a wonderful experience as an actor to go through, where you really are plunged to the depths of despair, and then you have to claw your way out and finish on this triumphant final note where you're belting a big old B after crying. So I think that's my favorite, because it's, as an acting piece, it just demands all of you, and you've also finished the show, so you feel like you okay, I did it. There's that bit of relief. I think that's my favorite to do. But as a song, I mean, I love Greatest Star, I love Cornet Man, I love Music That Makes Me Dance. I've almost forgot about People. I've had a number of people come to me, and it's often a similar story of, my mother sang this to me, or this was my mother's favorite song. My mother played this album, and People was our song, and my mother passed away, and hearing you sing this song brought my mother back for me today. And I've heard that. I know it's like, it means so much to people. So it's a really tremendous gift and a tremendous responsibility to, like, go out and do it justice. But since then, I've had a number of people, like, with that same story come to me and in tears at the stage door, and you go,
Oh,
I am very moved and honored to be just a little part of, like, your journey of healing. And I'm always very grateful that people share this with me, because it really reminds me of my reason for doing this, because all of the stuff that's happened has been great, but the reason that we do theater is to connect and to have an impact and help people laugh, cry, feel human.
yeah, it's beautiful. So you have played many iconic roles already. Do you have any dream roles left in your bucket list?
Oh yeah, sure do. I've always wanted to play Eliza Doolittle.
Oh my God,
I
you would be
just
so good as Eliza.
Thank you. I agree. I would love to play that part. I would love to do, waitress. I'd love to do Nellie Forbush in South Pacific or something new. That's always
Oh,
the
sure.
goal
Yeah,
too.
it's
Is like,
always fun to do
or
something
just
new.
write me a yeah. Let me. My dream role is the role that hasn't been written yet. I mean, okay.
And I'm thrilled to see it whenever it's here.
Yeah.
So, speaking of new, tell us a little bit about what is coming up for you, and then we will jump into your caterpillar, cocoon, and emergence eras. But tell us what we have to look forward to.
Well, it's going to be a busy fall because I'm starting Harmony on Broadway, which is a musical that was written by Barry Manilow and Bruce Sussman, who wrote, Coco Cabana. And it's not a bio musical it's not like, the Carole King musical or something like that. Also a great role I'd love to play. But it's the story of the singing group called the Comedian Harmonists, who were a world famous singing group of 6 men who were like singing in tight harmony and also doing these like funny physical comedic antics like the Marx Brothers. They were hugely famous in the 20s and 30s. They toured Carnegie Hall and, they were in a bunch of films and everybody knew who they were. And there were 3 members of the group that were Jewish, and they were German. So the story of Harmony is like what happens to this group when the Nazis come to power, and basically the story of why nobody outside of Germany has really heard of them in a big way. So I am playing one of the non-Jewish members of the group's Jewish wife. So my character is sort of a composite character. She's not. He was married to a non-Jewish girl, and they did get divorced. But she had a different name, and my character is a Bolshevik activist and leading communist rallies in the streets. So and she was not. So there's a bit of a combining of different people who lived in this time into my character, just so that I think they can give a little bit more, of exposition of like what's going on and at the time in this place. And so I'm originating that role this fall. We open for previews in October, and we open in November officially on Broadway. So this is the first role I get to originate on Broadway, which is just a huge dream come true. And I just had my first costume fitting, and they're showing you the pictures and letting you feel the fabrics of what you're gonna wear. And there's this like beautiful gown, and I put it on, and I just like got very teary. I was like, somebody is designing this for me to wear on Broadway. Like it was a very cool feeling. And then also this fall, I'm releasing a holiday EP, which my husband and I put out albums pretty regularly, and we've been wanting to do a holiday album for a while. And originally we were just going to put out a single of a song that I wrote last Christmas time called Never Had a Christmas With You, which is basically like, I never had Christmas until I met you, which is kind of like, because my husband is half Jewish, so his family does like Christmas, like they have a tree, and they have, like I didn't grow up with any of that. So we go there for Christmas, and like we get, they like do Christmas, which is really magical. So I wrote this song about like getting to have Christmas now that I have you. So that we were going to release it as a single, and then we're like, well, while we're in the studio, maybe we should do like one other song that's not a original. We'll do like a Christmas song, and we're like, well, while we're there, maybe we should also do this Tumba Lalaika, which is not technically a Hanukkah song, but it's this sort of nostalgic song, and it's in Yiddish, and it's sort of Hanukkah-esque in the way that like, you know, walking in a winter wonderland is Christmassy. Like it's not really it's not a Hanukkah song, but it's sort of a and then we were like, oh, you know what? And then since we're there, let's just record this duet of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. So before I knew it, like we had this like EP of 4 songs. So we are releasing that EP. I think it's going to drop on December 1st, but there's going to be a couple tracks that are available a little earlier, you know, as we gear up for the season. Now that Christmas starts, like in Halloween.
I know, for real. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to hear that. I mean, you're no stranger to Broadway at all, but what an absolute treat and dream to get to be originating a role on Broadway. That's just like the tip top. I mean, it's incredible. I'm very, very excited for you, and I know that you're going to just smash it. All right,
Thanks.
So we're going to jump into some questions about your caterpillar era. So what would you consider your caterpillar era when you're like looking back at your life?
I started working professionally very young. I was 19 when I booked my first job, which was the National Tour of Spring Awakening. And I got my equity card, and I was understudying all 5 women in that show. And I think, honestly, like that period, and even maybe the year before my undergrad, you know, I did NYU, I did a year, and then I did Spring Awakening for a year, and then I went back to school, and then I went out on the Les Mis tour, and then I went back to school, and then I went left and went back to school a number of times, and then I graduated, and then I couldn't get a job for like a year and a half. Like I just could not get a job. But I think of, you know, at the time, like I was like, I'm a professional actor. I've quote unquote made it, like in Spring Awakening, in Les Mis. And even in Les Mis, when I did it on Broadway, I think I felt like, I think looking back, all of that time was, I really had I had a very strong desire whenever I did work, scene work, song work, whatever, for somebody to tell me how to do it right, and for somebody to show me just what they wanted. Like I just had this idea that like the director is going to tell you what they want, and then you morph yourself into what it is they want. And I think I had that idea about a lot of things and a lot of the way that any art got made, which was that there was some visionary who was not me, and then I, as the actor or the singer, was the vessel through which their vision was achieved. And I think being an understudy probably exacerbated that, because somebody sets something and then you are required to do what they do. And especially as somebody who I think is a fairly decent mimic, you can easily kind of mimic what is working for other people and then never really find another way that actually feels more authentic and true to you. And I was not encouraged in those spaces to really explore or find something new. And in musical theater in particular, I think there's these ideas of like, you know, there's this type of person, and there's the ingenue, and there's the best friend, and there's this, and there's that, and you have to look a certain way to be this character, and you have to look a certain way to be that character. And like anybody who's sort of like unique and different is supposed to sort of change themselves, like to fit into that slot. Like you're supposed to be, for me, like I was always told like you have to lose like 10 or 15 pounds to be the ingenue, you know? And it's like that kind of thing where you're just like constantly being told you have to change yourself to fit in in their idea of what Christine Daae needs to look like or whatever.
Totally.
And why would you try and like cut parts out of yourself to fit into some 2-dimensional idea of what a human being is? Like, no, like bring your full whole self. Like you're not, so an ingenue can be ferocious and angry and she doesn't just have to be like sweet and pretty all the time. Like we all contain multitudes, and like you can do that, and your characters actually will, these characters who are written to be maybe tropes or stereotypes can become three-dimensional if you bring all parts of yourself to them. That can be hard if the writing doesn't fully support it. But
you've got to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes the writing does it for you, and sometimes you're having to make it work. But like in my sort of caterpillar days of when I was, honestly, up till I was like, I don't know, 25, 26, I think like I just thought I just wanted to go to a coach and have them tell me how to do it right. That was just what I wanted. And it took a long time to find within myself like that trust of and the patience to also go, okay, I haven't figured it out yet, but that I will. I just have to get up and let it feel crappy for a while.
Yeah, and just give yourself that room to play and explore. So tell me about one of your worst days.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Les Mis was coming to Broadway, and I had done the tour. I had started out as the understudy, and I'd been in the ensemble, and then I took over the role, and I played Cosette. And they were casting the tour, and I went in, and I knew all the people that were casting it. I mean, it was all the same creative team. And I knew they had a big group audition where we all had to do improv stuff, or I forget. And so I knew they brought in a lot of the tour cast. So it was like me and a bunch of my friends re-auditioning for people who already knew us. And I didn't get it. And I was so devastated. I think I was also, at the time, going through a breakup. So I was sort of like, I just felt like nothing's going my way, and I just remember laying in bed, crying very hard when I found out I didn't get it. And I really thought it was like, that was my only chance to be on Broadway. Because it was the closest I'd ever gotten, really, a final callback to a Broadway show. And I was like, all evidence had pointed towards this. You're not going to get this, or that this was my shot to be on Broadway.
Yeah.
And it
when
felt
it's
like
the only
personal
thing you've experienced, it feels so like life or death.
Yeah, and I think because they knew me, it felt personal, like that they didn't want me as part of their family. I took it very personally, and I just felt like nothing's going right in my life. And I had this weird arbitrary date of like, I want to make my Broadway debut by the time I'm 25. I had been saying that since I was, I don't know, a teenager. And those arbitrary dates are so stupid, but I was like coming up on my 25th, and I was just like, well, it's not going to happen, and I was so devastated. And then what ended up happening was that they were in previews, and I got a call, and they said, there's been an injury, and can you be at the theater tomorrow and be in the show tomorrow night? And,
what was that feeling like?
I mean, it was such a rush. And I mean, it actually was like, I had to show up the next day, do Good Morning America.
Oh my God.
And then, and then I had like 45 minutes of rehearsal with the company, because my track was like slightly different than what I had done on the road. And then I was in the show.
Wow.
And it was so exciting. And my dad was really cute. Like, he brought like a red towel that he bought at the dollar store and like rolled it out in front of the stage door so that I had a red carpet.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it was like the cutest dad thing that any dad has ever dadded. It was so sweet. And I mean, I was just like, my dreams are coming true, all this stuff. And then I'm waiting in the wing, and I hear, the opening, bum, bum, bum. And I start like weeping, I'm like, it's happening. And finally it's happening. And I get out on stage, and I'm wearing like the costume that I wore on the road. I look around, the set is the exact same set we had on the road. I look around, I know half the people because we had done it on the road. And I went, oh my God, it's the same thing. I went, oh, it's just theater. It's theater. It's what I've been doing all, like, my whole life. Oh, it's not different. And that was my experience of my Broadway debut. Was like, I built it up. I was so excited. It felt like a huge, career benchmark or what. And then I got out there and I went, oh my God, I'm standing on stage in a costume in a theater like I've done since I was 13 years old. It didn't feel different at all.
Wow. I feel like that's so important for people to hear, because I feel like a lot of the time we can reach these really intense milestones that we've built up our entire lives. And I think a lot of people feel that way once actually reaching them. And we don't really talk about that very much, which I think is interesting, because I feel like in the past when I've had that feeling, I've felt almost guilty for not like just absolutely seeing stars and moving into heaven forever.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I think, and people I hear a lot more people saying that they had imposter syndrome and that they didn't believe they belonged there. And I mean, I guess, but I don't know, maybe because I've been at this a long time. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is my home. Like, theater is my home. Why shouldn't I belong here? But also I ultimately just feel like Broadway and all of these big sort of namey things we set out for ourselves are just, they are ultimately the same thing that you have been doing all your life, just with a little more money behind it.
Yeah.
Higher production value. You're getting paid better on Broadway, and your costumes were probably more expensive to make, and the sets were more expensive, and you have really fancy lighting, but it's not different from my high school production. It's, everybody's great. You've gone, that was different. My high school production, anybody could be in it. So, I mean, it's so yeah, the talent level is higher, but I just did not experience it as oh, it's so different now that I'm on Broadway and I get to live my dream on Broadway. I think it's this thing that people sell you. It's a dream that people sell in order to sell tickets and to sell BFAs. And I don't mean that in a, I think it's I love it. I love being on Broadway and I want to stay on Broadway, but also I understand that it's not ultimately, the goal for me is not be on Broadway. The goal is do work that I love and am passionate about and play roles that I'm excited to play.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's on Broadway. And my most of my most fulfilling acting and, acting jobs have been in these little tiny regional theaters where you get paid very little and you're there for 5 weeks or 7 weeks. And it's magic. And the New York Times does not come to see it. And, the local, whatever, the local paper sends their one theater reporter who gets paid $50 to write that review or whatever. I mean? Yeah. It's not, but those, there have been magic, truly magical experiences where I've learned the most and had and just felt like as an actor, I got to play the most and grow the most. And those have happened mostly in, I don't know, like Weston Playhouse in Vermont, which is a town of like 500 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I totally feel that. It's interesting. For me, I've worked in theater and film for most of my life, really, and I feel like for a long time, theater is my first love, and I think for a long time, I put film on this like really high, holy pedestal. And after, being in film and working in film for 10 years, doing like film roles, TV roles, big commercial roles, and then I went back to the theater and did like a community theater production, and it was so much more fulfilling than any of the like big like wahoo film stuff that I had done, and I was really surprised by that. And I feel like it's really easy as an actor, especially as a very young actor, like especially if you're in like a BFA program, I feel like it's very easy to feel like, well, if it's not this certain caliber, it's beneath me, And it's interesting because that doesn't necessarily guarantee the kind of experience that you're really out for as an actor, which is that fulfilling artistic experience.
Absolutely.
So what do you feel like held you back in your Caterpillar era, like personally?
I think I was unwilling or afraid to see myself as a boss, or as and I think there's a lot that's gendered there, but I still struggle with that, but I have, like, my husband Jason was like, I mean, back when we were sort of in the beginning of dating, and he was, he's a pianist, and he just, he's a jazz guy, and like they make albums, like that's part of their, that's what they do. It's like we're in shows, they make albums, and he was like, you should make an album, and I was like, what do you mean? Like I don't know how to
just
do that.
Do that.
He was like, just do it. He's like, yeah. You should do that. And I was like, well, but like I'm not like as good as I'll be, maybe in 5 years. And he was like, so what? Like, it's a time capsule. This is how you are now. And, and I was like, oh, okay. And like with his help, he did the arrangements and, helped me produce the record. And that was like one of my first big projects where I like was in charge, and I wouldn't have done it if he had not sort of put the idea in and then pushed it.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And like I was always afraid, to really put myself out there too much, be annoying on Instagram, or be annoying pushing a product or pushing myself, and putting myself out there in a way that I just thought would be pushy. I just was very afraid of being seen that way, of being too assertive. And then, between that project of like the album and then it was like, oh, you just make it, and then you put it, oh, I see, you just make things and you put them out, and it's hard to be the boss because you have to make decisions and you want input from other people, but ultimately they're your decisions and nobody else really cares that much, so you're like, so I don't know. So between that and then in grad school, there was a very, very heavy emphasis on writing and learning how to create for yourself, and learning, teaching you editing skills so that you could edit together your own web series if you wanted, or something like that. There was a lot of emphasis on creating your own work. And I really fell in love with that. And I found my voice when it was really when the pandemic started. I had been starting to work on this play, and then I was able to really write this play. And it's a play I'm very proud of. And, I think it needs work, like all new works do. But once I started getting in more creator mode. It was like I was writing, I was producing music and recording music, and now I do cabarets, and I have a cabaret. I have I have different cabaret shows I do that I've written, and they're always changing. They're always in flux. But I had this fear in the beginning of, well, if I do it, it won't be good. And also it will, it won't, isn't somebody else supposed to come in and say, like, we're going to produce a record for you?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to do it. So I think there was a lot of fear there, and just also just feeling like, well, if I don't know how, then I'm not going to. And now my advice, like, everybody's always like, what advice do you have for young actors? I'm like, create your own material, write, whether, I don't care if it's choreography, if it's writing music, if it's writing plays, if it's a pilot, any of that stuff. But like, not only is it good for you to put yourself out there and learn that you need to both be an artist and a business person, because the people who are just artists, unless they get really, 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 really lucky, they don't last in this business, because it's a business.
It is.
You need to have both. You have to honor your artistic self, and you have to be a business person and learn how to run your business. So I think, like, whether or not you put this material that you create out, which I actually think you generally should, and not wait for it to be perfect, because it will never be perfect, and people are going to consume it, and then they'll move on to something else and like a million other things, and then by the time your next thing is ready, they'll be out, and you'll be like, oh, I remember I did something by that. Just get it out there. But also it just makes you so much a much better collaborator.
Yes.
Because then when you are hired when you're a hired gun as an actor, basically, and you're the vessel for someone else's story that they wrote and someone else is directing and all that stuff, like, you're in the habit of coming up with ideas and looking at things from like a global perspective and saying, okay, what's the arc, and what is the function of this character within this arc, or what is the arc of this, or in the structure of the song, like, how does the song structure work, and how can it be improved and pack a bigger punch? Like, you're always looking at things from that way, and that makes you an invaluable collaborator.
For sure. What helped you push forward through some of your harder days?
Therapy.
Yes, we love therapy.
I think it's something that I now do regularly, even when I feel like I don't need it. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's sort of like when you go to get you can go get a massage or something after 2 years, and your body will be like, it sort of feels like it feels amazing, right? As everything is getting shaken out, you have this big cathartic experience, and it feels great. But like, there was no need for you to walk over like as a hunchback until you had your massage. It's like upkeep. So I go now, even when I feel like I think things are okay, because there's often stuff going on that you're not. It's good to work on the stuff when you're in a healthy place.
Yes.
So that when things are bad, you have built systems for yourself,
some tools in your toolbox
you when you're not, yeah. And like, I even think about, like, this is a very recent example, but I suffer from stage fright sometimes, and it's been with Funny Girl, like, it was, of course, you sort of have the normal stage fright when you're first understudy, you're an understudy going on for the first time. Like, that's normal, right? And then you have, like, but then I got more comfortable, and I really didn't have it. And then I, like, started to go through this phase where I was, like, terrified of losing my lyrics. And I would talk to myself, and I would be like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, what, it's, and you understand, like, logically that it's fine. And then I would get out on stage, and I would be miserable, because I would be in a high state of anxiety and not able to focus and relax because all I could think of was I'm going to forget my lines.
Yeah.
So we like worked on some techniques to help me deal with that. And I was like, okay, like what's a plan? Like, what will I do if I forget the lyrics? I'll scat sing, and will the audience like that? Probably. Or I can, rehearse to myself, like just being like in character, stopping and saying to the conductor, let's take that back again. So that at least you have a plan of if I really mess up. That was something I dealt with a few months ago. And then yesterday I was doing the show and I hadn't had high anxiety in the show a lot. I was so anxious also about my lines. It came back really quickly out of nowhere. I think maybe I had too much caffeine or something.
Oof.
And like, I was shaking. Like I got off stage after Greatest Star and I was shaking. And there's nothing, I don't know, like, it's like, thank goodness then I had been going to therapy regularly to work on this stuff. So that then suddenly yesterday you have like, your heart's beating wildly and you don't know why. And you go, I can close my eyes and do like the exact kind of metta meditation that I know tends to calm me down. And, and then I can go through, okay, this is what I'll do if this happens. And you manage to like get through it and relax.
Because I'm sure that you performed Greatest Star, the crowd was going wild and nobody had any idea that that was happening for you internally, but it's such a real thing. People, anytime that I've ever said that I have like imposter syndrome or stage fright, people do not believe me. But just because you're doing something very well doesn't mean that anxiety can't hit for whatever reason.
I kept telling myself, I was like, they're so happy to be here. Like, you have nothing to prove. Like, listen to them. They are so excited. I mean, they were screaming in the middle of Greatest Star. They were,
wow.
It was like, they were literally like, it was wild and it was wonderful. And they had such an amazing energy. And I think that freaked me out. Like,
yeah,
in a way that I was like, you're here, you're getting all of this crazy energy. And you suddenly in my head, I was like, oh no, I'm going to disappoint all of them because I'm going to forget the words.
So we're going to move on to our cocooning era. Have you had an era that you feel is your cocooning era, that you've kind of been in more of a hermit space where, you're just living on a more internal life for a period of time? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID
Yeah.
made that happen for a lot of people and certainly me. And I think that also coincided with grad school. I was there, it was a 3-year program and it hit towards the end of our second year. So what was already a time where I had said, I'm going to go away from the business for a little while. I'm not really going to audition. I'm not making albums. Like I was like, I'm going away to just focus on my craft and take it very slow. That was already part of it. And then COVID hit. And then it was like, I have to do this all at home by myself and not even with my 15 other classmates. So, it was just me and my husband and my cat. So but I know COVID was hard in many ways, but I found it to be a very creatively productive time for me personally, because it was just, I was like, oh, I have time to just sit and let my imagination wander. And I looked forward to my writing time every day, and it was so easy to make that time when we were at home. And specifically with writing, like for me, I think I have to wake up and have it quiet.
Yeah.
And I write for and I just have this rule, which I got off the train. I'm going to get back on the train as soon as Harmony is running. But I had this thing where it's like just 15 minutes a day. You can do that. So I would wake up and over morning coffee, just get some writing done. But then over the pandemic, I had all this extra time. So that writing could last like 3 hours, 4 hours. And it was like such a joy to just feel that there was so much space and possibility within my own imagination that I had not had the chance to really discover before, because I was running around. And suddenly, like, when you're sitting still and you just give yourself time and space to let your imagination wander. And for me, I'm better in the morning. So
Yeah.
it was good in the morning.
I think that it really was such an interesting collective cocooning experience. And I think we're only just now starting to even barely understand the positive ramifications of that, both personally and collectively. I think that we'll look back on that time with very different eyes in that way, in the sense of cocooning. Is there anything about your cocooning period that you feel would surprise people?
I wasn't lonely. I mean, I had one person who I like a lot. So that helped. But, and also because he is an artist and we can make art together. It wasn't that it wasn't frustrating, but I felt like I felt like enough with just the richness of the music that we made together at home and shared on our Instagram live, for our parents, like it wasn't anything wide range, we didn't have lots of viewers. But I think I was surprised by how that felt enough to just be doing that here in our living room and sharing it with the people we cared about, and then just writing and allowing myself to be content with my, my voice in that way. I was surprised that I didn't need to be in a show to be happy.
Wow.
Or to feel creatively fulfilled. I didn't need that. I love having it.
Yeah.
It's so fun to go to work and be in a show, but it is actually, I felt like I got a lot of what I needed.
Yeah.
And that surprised myself. And I think that is actually, it's helpful for me to hear myself saying this, because I can get wrapped up in, oh my God, like what's the next?
Yeah, of course.
What's next? Like, you worry, you have ambition, right? Like you want your career to not fizzle out. You're always afraid your next job is your last job. That's part of how actors are. And,
Yeah.
but it's helpful for me to remember that when I wasn't working, and nobody was, I was content, just making art and not even having anybody know about it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, and I think a very good reminder for all creatives that at the end of the day, our art is a very personal experience, and especially performers within creatives. So much of it can get so wrapped up in other people consuming it, and I think that that's so neat that out of that cocooning period, that was one thing that you were able to get out of it, really find that creative fulfillment without someone else saying, oh, good artist, That's neat.
Yeah, I mean, then you got to hold on to that.
Totally,
have to
totally.
remind yourself.
And like remind yourself, because there's so much hustle culture in entertainment in just such a hardcore way. So a very good reminder for you, me, and everybody listening, I'm sure. So moving into that emergence era, when did you see that first beam of light where you're kind of coming out of the cocoon and you're like, oh, okay, wow, I'm a little different. Things feel a little different. I don't really know what is coming, but I feel something coming. Did you have any kind of moment like that?
I think that I guess the closest would be when I went on for Fanny.
Yeah.
And I suddenly felt a shift. It coming out of grad school, I mean, I got a lot out of it, but they really pump you up about this showcase that you're going to have. And then I got out of my showcase and I did not have agents and casting directors and banging down my door to want to work with me. That is not how it happened. So I was pretty bummed. Everybody gets a sheet at the end with your showcase, like who wants to meet with you, and mine had nobody on it. I mean, it was really, really disappointing. And a lot of people be like, oh, the pandemic, but like a lot of my classmates had people who wanted to meet with them. So it was hard in that way. But so I was like, well, and then auditions were sort of coming in now and then, very slow, nothing, it was like I didn't see that anything was gonna change. And I was like, oh, okay, it's just gonna be slow, and maybe the industry doesn't want me, it's not my time, and maybe I actually said, like, maybe I'm gonna take a step away and not try this right now, because I was so hurt that, like, I didn't have the reception that I had hoped,
Yeah.
And then I booked Funny Girl, and I was very excited, but my agents at the time were like, well, it's an understudy, like, you've understudied so much, we don't want you to understudy anymore. And I was like, it's a job, and I like to work, and it is an amazing role and a dream role, and I want to do it. They were like, okay. Then after that, weekend happened, and the response just started to blow up. I think it actually physically, like, I felt, this is when I went back into therapy, actually, because I was like, I couldn't eat or sleep really for like 2 weeks after that first weekend. I was so overwhelmed by the experience of having done it. And then I was also like very overwhelmed of the way that suddenly people were talking about me in the public sphere, and I was seeing my name, you know what I mean? And I was just, that was the first time at anything in that, in that level was happening. So I felt kind of ill. And that was how it felt. The emergence phase was like, I didn't have an appetite, and I just felt highly anxious, and I had trouble sleeping.
Yeah. It's like a shock to your system.
And and my manager was like, well, you kind of birthed something, and after you give birth, sometimes there's a little postpartum like stuff, and it was very accurate, because I just really didn't, my body was in such shock.
Yeah.
And then I learned over time, to start to get used to that, and also how to handle it when some sort of tough things would come up, and you just have to, ask yourself, like, well, what do I want to put out into the world, and what the narrative that I would like to be put forth to be. And I've always it really frustrated me when I heard like lies that would get published, and then get shared on Twitter, and everybody is just believing false things.
Yeah.
And and so, but you can't even acknowledge them, because you're like, that's not, I don't want to give credence to this, anyway. So just to say that it was, I think I had a bit of an experience as I sort of emerged into this public domain that became new to me. I'm grateful that it happened when I was like an adult and had gone through stuff enough to go, okay, this feels overwhelming. how am I going to handle this in a way that I can look back next year, or, you know, and feel like I didn't say something that I regret, you know, and that I didn't just impulsively do things that would have felt, I don't know, maybe satisfying in the moment,
Sure.
but that I ultimately knew would not, you know, that would not ultimately serve the goal, which is to like, I've now been given this opportunity and this, you know, this platform after a long time of study and hard work. So it's like, well, the goal now is to like take all that stuff that I've learned and try and like share that and try and help other people along the same path, and so that they're not watching, you know, the Kardashians like and thinking like that's how we should do it, you know, that there's somebody out there who can say like, no, you can like just work hard and be gracious and grateful, and even when things are difficult, like there's a way to move through it and honor yourself and your feelings, but without lashing out or being unkind and all those things.
Yeah. And I know there is definitely some Funny Girl is in the press in many different ways, and I know that you really navigated all of that really beautifully and handled yourself with so much grace and kindness and consideration in a way that I think really speaks volumes about you and your character. And even the most gracious among us can feel very tempted to, you know, have I know, I mean, I can feel like that online sometimes for sure, and I have to reel it in. But you handled that very well.
The people online, how they say the things they say, is very hard.
It's
for me
real
to wrap my
rough.
head around.
Yeah, and especially if you're already having a
that
bad
should be
day.
Yeah. That should be my next acting role, is like somebody who just trolls people online, so I can really like, I can understand like what it comes from, like how somebody could possibly. That should be my next role, the great challenge.
Gosh, I know. I don't understand. I guess we would have to do some character study to figure that one out. Is there anything in particular that you think that we should collectively be more honest about?
I think we should be more honest about vocal health and injuries. I think, you know, people are afraid to talk about their experiences. I think we should be more honest about the ways in which we're treated by people in power, you know, in positions of power, directors, producers, the way that we're spoken to, the way, you know, it's hard because they have the power.
Yeah.
And people they want to work. But, you know, it was interesting. Like, we never had the same reckoning in the theater world that the film industry had with Harvey Weinstein, right? Like that never happened.
And that's definitely going on in the theater.
Yeah, it's not that it's not happening, but, you know, we never had that reckoning. And I think that there were very powerful sources, you know, that caused that, you know, that kept that from happening.
Yeah.
I don't know the ins and outs, but yeah.
I have a feeling that will resurface sooner rather than later. And I hope that it makes for a better working environment, because it's such a huge thing in entertainment, and actors really do get I think people would be stunned to learn about the truth of some of the, like, just call it what it is, some of the abuses that even like huge name actors experience on set and in pre and post production. I totally agree with you. I think that's a very good one to be a little more honest about. it leads me to my last question for you, Julie. What kind of butterflies do you think that our world needs? And what would you say to the caterpillars and cocooning, hoping to become that kind of butterfly?
I think that the world needs a lot of different kinds of butterflies, but butterflies that are butterflies that create spaces for collaboration. I think we need butterflies that invite others to play. And the advice I would give to those cocooning and etc. Would be to trust your impulses and look for the things that delight you as you work on anything. And if you find a seed of something that makes you happy or makes you laugh or makes you interested, then to just keep following those breadcrumbs, because they will lead you to something unexpected if you just keep following that path. And that's really where your voice lies, is just by following that path of what delights you. And not to throw it away in the beginning because you think it's stupid or bad. Let
Hard,
the bad
scary,
things
be
bad for a while. Yeah. I mean, I was watching like the Taylor Swift documentary recently on Netflix, and like she sings like these little nothing phrases into a voice memo. And if I sang that exact phrase into a voice memo, I'd be like, meh, stupid, like not gonna. But what does she do? She like likes this thing. She goes, oh, it's interesting. I kind of like that part of it. Okay. And then she connects with a producer who sets it to an interesting beat that she likes. And then she expands it and it grows. And it, and it's like suddenly this little tiny idea that I would have dismissed as being derivative or not great, is like this song that a million people love, So it's like, don't dismiss those early germs of an idea. Like, just follow them and see where they lead you. Just because it's not good yet doesn't mean it won't be.
Right. And one thing I say all the time to other artists is there is no artist in any capacity who has created brilliant work that did not create a bunch of really crappy work before the brilliant work.
Correct.
It is a huge part of the process.
Yes, you have to be bad for a while.
Yes, and be comfortable with it. And then that's where you find the magic in tending to that garden where maybe nothing's growing in the way you wanted it first. I think that is great. That is excellent advice. So if you are listening, you can look forward to hearing Julie Benko's holiday EP soon and seeing her in Harmony on Broadway. Julie, would you please tell our listeners where they can find you online?
Sure, you can visit my website at juliebenko.com. That's Julie, B like boy, E, and like Nancy, Ko. And you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at JujuJulieB, at JuJuJuli, and then it will like fill in. But don't follow Jujubee, the drag queen, although you should follow her, but I just mean you could follow both of us.
Just make the rounds. Awesome. Well,
yeah, just follow all of us.
Yes, all the Julies. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Julie. I really appreciate it. And I know that
Sorry, I'm at my piano.
That was great. And we will end on that note. Thank you so much for listening to Before the Butterfly. Your support means so much to me. If you enjoyed the show and want to make my day, please take a few seconds to rate us 5 stars and follow us online at Before the Butterfly Pod. You can find loads of exclusive bonus clips and gain early access to the podcast by subscribing to our Patreon. I'm Alexandra Joy, wishing you a blessed metamorphosis.